If Europe's militaries found themselves at war tomorrow, they'd most likely depend on technology owned by this man, Elon Musk, who recently called the German Chancellor a fool and the British Prime Minister evil. Musk's Starlink is the global leader in communications satellites, and his SpaceX company dominates the industry that launches them into orbit.
At this moment, there is no other option.
Now, the EU says it's getting serious about taking security into its own hands with the launch of IRIS², its biggest satellite project to date.
With IRIS², Europe will no longer depend on others for satellite connectivity.
The question is it too little too late? When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the Starlink satellite system proved key by giving Kiev's military an advantage in high-speed internet access. Ukraine's allies and Europe's satellite industry took note.
When you're talking about Ukraine, when you talk about defense, it's as important as having a broadband connectivity in the middle of the battlefield as knowing where all the different assets that you have deployed are and which is the state of the asset. Then Internet of Things. There is a special section that is called Internet of Battlefield Things, IOBT. It's very important to know where are not just the arms but also the ammunition, the water, the soldiers itself. To have the control of all these over a battlefield, which is a chaotic scenario, it's as important as having the broadband connectivity.
We know from Ukraine this has been the case where connectivity was essential when ground infrastructure is destroyed. So you get into something that can be very delicate, and you do not want others to listen into communications, or you do not want others to just not give you the communication when you need it most. And that could be for political reasons, it could be for commercial reasons. So the basic question is, are you ready to take that risk? And the answer that Europe has been giving, and you could argue maybe with some delay, but the answer, it's very clear today that also Europe is building up its own capability. So that means it's your own infrastructure and it's your own service, and the governance to decide who will use it and when to use it will be in European hands.
For years, Europe's dependence on foreign countries like Russia and the US for putting satellites into orbit was a niche concern, not something the public seemed to worry much about. Europe-based aerospace companies like Spanish Sateliot have been trying to draw attention to the issue for a while.
I think that one of the things that happens after COVID and Ukrainian war is that we realize that we are alone. We have some friends, nice friends, but they are not family. Our problem, we have to solve it inside Europe. We cannot rely anymore that somebody else is going to keep solving European problems.
Elon Musk's recent behavior in particular has raised alarms in Europe. Around 70% of Brits and Germans said in a poll that his meddling in their politics in favor of the far right is unacceptable. As all this was unfolding, the European Commission announced it had greenlit the IRIS² program, which would wean Europe off its dependence on foreign technology.
In an era marked by uncertainty and volatility, secure connectivity is imperative. We rely on it to manage crisis and contribute to the defense of Europe, ensure surveillance and protect critical infrastructures, drive new business opportunities and bridge the digital divide.
The IRIS² system will be made up of 290 EU-owned satellites developed and launched with the help of the European Space Agency, as well as Europe-based private sector companies. The goal is to be operative in 2030.
Is a 2030 timeframe realistic? That is a very aggressive timeframe. We look at where Amazon's Project Kuiper is. We look really to see how long it has taken Starlink to get to where they are. We have seen how companies in China who want to do something similar have taken off very slowly and only now are launching satellites measured in the dozens after talking about constellations for years. So that ambitious timeline will probably come at a higher price tag potentially than the European Union realizes now. The costs of IRIS² have already gone up from just 6 billion since this idea first came forward a few years ago to almost 11 billion. So just while it has just stayed in the in the drawing phase and blueprints and just ideas and concepts, it's already gone up in cost, and no one's even started bending metal yet.
The IRIS² plan for less than 300 satellites is dwarfed by Musk's current 7,000 and plans for over 30,000 satellites in the future. And China, which announced its 1,000 Sails project in 2024, plans to launch over 1,000 satellites within the next 2 years. But some analysts give the EU good chances of making significant progress on this front. That's because the European companies contracted for IRIS², including Eutelsat OneWeb and SES, already have hundreds of satellites orbiting Earth.
If the raison d'etre for IRIS² is independence, and a concern that Europeans might be reliant on SpaceX or another non-European company for broadband from low Earth orbit, they shouldn't have that concern. Already 2 companies from Europe provide a similar capability.
But if you want to get a satellite into space, you need a rocket, and that's where Musk's SpaceX still dominates.
When it comes to launch, SpaceX undoubtedly does dominate the launch sector. Arianespace had its maiden flight of the Ariane 6 last year. Meanwhile, in 2024, SpaceX had around 140 launches. So if you're looking to launch a satellite on a medium to heavy lift rocket, right now, the main player is SpaceX.
Sateliot, which is part of the IRIS² consortium and is supported by European institutions, is reliant on SpaceX.
We have used it. The first one was not okay, but the other 5 we launched with the SpaceX. And honestly, it's difficult. Even if I wanted to launch with a different vehicle, okay, it would be extremely difficult to do it, okay, because there is very few options to launch. You have the Indians, you have some other rockets in the United States, but there are very few options to look after if you decided not to go with SpaceX.
Europe's biggest bet at the moment is the Ariane 6 rocket, operated by France's Arianespace. Its maiden flight was in July last year. Its second flight still doesn't have a fixed date.
There are probably a lot of customers waiting in the wings, European customers, for Ariane to come online. I think there'll be a lot of demand for the Ariane 6. It's a good rocket. It's just a matter of can that be produced at scale?
Advocates of Europe's space program say getting the Ariane project off the ground is not a matter of luck. It's a matter of investment.
Do they do enough? Very short answer is no. If you compare the size of investment transatlantic to what is being invested in Europe, we have a factor of 5 to 1. So we have 5 times more investment on the US side.
Of course, European taxpayers might not agree that the new space race is the best way to spend billions of euros. But Europe's aerospace industry is eager for the chance to catch up with the global leaders, the US and China.
We have everything, okay? We have the best engineers in the world. We have the best schools. We are open to innovation as much as the US people or the Chinese people. At the same time, okay, we have to say that at the same time, Sateliot exists thanks to Elon Musk and SpaceX. Okay, this is the reality. We don't have to forget. Okay, we don't want that SpaceX disappear. SpaceX, it's an amazing vehicle to take our satellites to space. Okay? It's a unique. Okay, what he has done and what SpaceX has done, it has changed the space industry forever. Then, but at this moment, okay, we have to try to diversify. Okay, this absolute dominion that SpaceX has right now.